Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome. And what an honor to be the second favorite lecturer of the Academy. It's fantastic. And it's a great privilege for me to be here. And so I offer you all my congratulations. And of course, I know you know this. This isn't sort of the end. This is just part of the journey. But keep encouraging each other as you go forward. And as the Bible says, provoke each other to good works. And so it's my joy to be here. Thank you, Steve and Angie, for the invitation. Thank you for the hospitality. You look after me so well. I've been so blessed already. And it's my joy for a few minutes this morning to share the Word of God with you. So if you've got a Bible and you would like to follow a reading with me, I'm going to read from John chapter 5. John chapter 5. And I'll read from verse 16. It's the words of Jesus. It's a strange sort of passage. Let me set the context for you really quickly because it'll help. Jesus has been doing some miracles, and one of the miracles he's done is on the Sabbath day. Now, in the context of his religious world, that's created a bit of a storm. And because of that, he's having to defend himself, really, essentially here in John chapter 5. But as he defends himself, he's explaining what he's doing, and he's explaining why he's doing it, and he's explaining how he does it. And it's in that explanation that I think there is an application for me and you in the 21st century world. So though these words seem very unique and specific to Jesus, I think they have a fantastic application for us today. Is that okay? So we're going to read them together and then we'll get straight into it. Verse 16, John chapter 5. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jews persecuted him. And Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at work to this very day, and I too am working." For this reason, the Jews tried all the harder to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even claiming God as his own Father, therefore making himself equal with God. Jesus gave them this answer, "I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees the Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he does. Yes, to his amazement, he will show him even greater things than these. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives life to them, even so the Son gives life to whom he pleased to give it. Moreover, the Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. I tell you the truth, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life, and he will not be condemned. He has crossed over from death to life. I tell you the truth, the time is coming and is now come when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear it will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son to have life in himself. And he has given him authority to judge because he is the Son of Man. Do not be amazed at this, for a time is coming when all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good will rise to live, and those who have done evil will rise to be condemned. By myself I can do nothing. I judge only as I hear, and my judgment is just, for I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. When we are addressing any passage that deals with Jesus himself, we always have to manage a difficult tension that we have to acknowledge. The tension is one that sits at the heart of who Jesus in fact is, and we've got to sort of resolve ourselves to that tension so that we can take the principles and apply them to our lives. The tension at the heart of this passage is that we understand from John's Gospel, John's account, that Jesus is both absolutely fully God. He's 100% God, but he's also 100% man. He's human. So it's an amazing idea. It's a hard one to get our head around, but when you read that passage, and John in particular works hard at getting that idea across to us that Jesus is fully God, but also fully human, when we come to this passage, we can hear the echo of that in Jesus' own teaching. Jesus is not running away from the fact that he is God. But he is teaching us that everything you're seeing and everything I'm doing is out of my humanness. He's not just doing it because he's God. He's doing it out of his relationship with his Father. And if we grab that idea, then it means this. Even though we're talking about Jesus, and it feels like a very unique passage about Jesus, then we understand this, that the principles contained in this passage are then important to me and you. It's easy to read something like that and check out. Because, well, that's Jesus. That's Jesus talking about himself. But if Jesus is not just talking about himself as God, if Jesus is talking about his relationship with his Father as a man, then we can check in, right? We can read a passage like this and we can go, wow, there are principles here that are important to me. The second tension, and it's sort of related to the first one, is that not only is Jesus fully God and fully man, but we also get this idea from John's Gospel. He is the Son of God, but also the servant of God. And you get this amazing tension that sits at the heart of Jesus. He is God the Son made flesh. So in his own right, he is the Son of God. Yet every time we see him, he's serving the will of the Father. In fact, in John's Gospel, we've got one of the most amazing expressions of Jesus serving the Father when he takes a bowl of water and washes the feet of his disciples, literally positioning himself as a servant. And so in this beautiful Gospel of John, we've got this marvelous celebration that Jesus is the Son of God. But we see him position himself before us as a servant. Now, if that's true, then we can read this passage in that light. Jesus isn't just talking to us as the Son of God, but he's also talking to us as the servant of the Father. As someone who has learned to serve. Wow. Now, if that's true, then that allows me to check in to this passage. I am hearing things and seeing things that I can learn from as a follower of Jesus, because my humanity and the fact that I'm called to serve God, now I've got a connecting point with Jesus himself on this issue, because Jesus isn't speaking as God here, he's speaking as a man. He's not just speaking as the Son of God here, he's speaking as the servant of God here. And therefore I can make a journey towards this amazing passage and learn some stuff. The writer to the Hebrews puts it beautifully. He says this, that Jesus learned obedience. Let's pause there. There's a thought. Jesus learned obedience by what? By the things he suffered. Now, suffering there doesn't just mean the idea of pain suffering. It means the processes that Jesus had to go through. Suddenly, he has to submit himself under stuff in order to learn stuff. Now, that's a hard idea for our heads. How can God have to learn something? Well, he's not learning it as God, because he knows everything is God. He's learning it as a man. And that's a remarkable idea at the heart of our faith. And because of that then, we could look at John chapter 5 in this way, and please don't be offended by this. It's almost like Jesus in John chapter 5 is giving us the mechanics of these words in Hebrews. That the writer to the Hebrews says he learned obedience through the things he suffered. And here in John 5, we're getting how Jesus actually did that. The things he actually engaged in order to make that happen. And therefore, when I read a passage like this, the temptation and the danger is I can read something like that and say, well, that's Jesus. That's the Son of God. And I check out. That's just him doing his thing there as the Son of God. But actually, if Jesus is speaking as a man, and if Jesus is speaking as a servant of God, then he's calling me not to check out, but to check into this and hear some of the big ideas that are the mechanics of his own dynamic ministry. If we don't rush past this passage, Jesus is actually giving us big touch points that allow him to do what he's doing, that explain why he's doing what he's doing, that explain how he's doing what he's doing, and therefore, potentially, has an application to me and you in the 21st century. Does that make sense? And so, it's a challenging passage, but actually, it's calling us in. So when we look at the mechanics, forgive that language, when we look at the mechanics of this passage, what are we learning about Jesus that we could apply to our lives, and especially on this wonderful Academy Day, in the 21st century. Here's the first big idea I want you to get, and it's very, very simple, but it's an amazing one. Jesus teaches us that he was aligned to the Father. Jesus was aligned to the Father. Now look at his language here in verse 19. Very powerful statement indeed. A controversial one. Jesus says, the Son can do nothing by himself. In fact, he goes on to say in verse 30, he's not here to please himself, but to please the Father. There's a thought for our 21st century world. The Son can... Now, if you read, the Son can do nothing by himself on its own, here's what it sounds like. It sounds like Jesus is sort of in a straitjacket. And he sort of has no choice. And he just has to do what he has to do, because that's it. But when you read verse 19, in the light of his concluding statement of verse 30, actually he's not saying, I can't, in the absolute sense. He's saying, I have made a decision not to. Jesus has made a conscious decision. Now, I know this is a hard one for our heads because he's the Son of God, but he's also fully human. Jesus has made a conscious decision not to do what he wants to do. And some of you will hear the echo of that later on in his life when he's in a garden and he takes a cup, metaphorically speaking, and he says, if it's possible for me not to have to drink this cup, that would be great. But he says, not what I will, not what I want, but what you want. Now, that's not just a cool moment in a garden where Jesus rises to the challenge. That moment in the garden is an expression of the mentality he's had all his life. And under pressure, he goes back to what he knows. And under pressure, he goes back to this idea, I will not do what I want. I will do what he wants. Are you with me? And so Jesus makes a decision to align to the Father. What is alignment in this context? Here's my definition for you. Feel free to disagree. But alignment here is not doing what I want. And that's a big idea in spiritual formation. That's a big idea in being a follower of Jesus. That's a big idea not just for an academy that lasts a year. That's the academy of life in Christianity. That's me and you grabbing a big growed up idea that says if I'm going to be a serious follower of Jesus, one of the big ideas I've got to get to grips with is not doing what I want. Are you with me? An alignment is the courage to say, I won't do what I want. I won't make that the driving priority of my life. I don't know if you travel much, but literally tomorrow morning I'll fly off to Belfast from Birmingham Airport. And I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to traveling. I have everything organized. I'm one of those, I like to get there an hour before and have a coffee. I hate running through the airport. I've got everything packed, ordered, lists sorted. Okay, so who's with me? Who's that sort of control freak in the room? Thank you. The non-control freaks will look at me and go, weirdo. But that's who I am, and I very rarely miss a plane as a result of that. And I don't have those horror stories of running through the airport, but I don't care. I quite like not running through the airport. Now, I'm one of those people, when I get to security, I'm ready. Okay? All the big signs. People telling you, get your belt off, get your coat off, get your iPad out, get your lip balm in your bag, all of that sort of stuff. I've done that. I'm ready, because all the big signs are saying, get ready. And I always seem to get behind the person. Are you that person? We have a ministry team waiting at the front for you afterwards, and we want to release you from that last-minuteness that's on you. Get your bag ready. Get your belt off. Get your coat off. Get yourself ready, because there's someone like me standing behind you who's ready. And of course, you've got those little bags, haven't you? And of course, we've got to put all our liquids in the bag, because if we don't, somehow it'll affect, the plane could go down if we don't get the liquids in the bag. And not only have we got to get the liquids in the bag, we've got to seal the bag. If the bag doesn't seal, we can't go through. And of course, I've seen people literally stuff the bag full. And they're desperately trying to seal it. And it's not happening. It's mission impossible. And you know, there's a security alert now because your lip balm is preventing the bag from being sealed. And that lip balm could create a terrorist incident across the network. So you've got to seal the bag. And if you've ever tried to seal those bags, they're really tricky. Because there's a little strip. And then you've got to get the strip inside this little sort of channel. And if you've got, you know, difficult eyes, it's difficult. You're trying to just get, and you have to line it up perfectly. You've got to get the strip into the channel. And there's this beautiful clicking moment, isn't there? Come on, who's with me? Isn't that a great moment? Just, ooh, yeah. It just clicks. But in order for it to click, it's got to align. And in order for it to align, something has to go into something else. Dynamic spiritual principle there that I really believe in, and it's this: some things only click when they align. And I meet many wonderful Christians, and they're trying to see God do amazing things in and through their lives without ever aligning with God, without ever taking seriously the conversation, what am I doing that maybe the Lord doesn't want me to do? Or am I driving in a direction that may not be the will of God for my life? And the Lord wants me to consider what He wants rather than what I want. And for that clicking moment to happen, something has to fit into something else. What we're often trying to do is make God fit into our channel. Now, I know that might not happen in Cambridge, but it happens in other parts of the United Kingdom where we're off on a journey and we're saying, God, fit in with me. That's a tension at the heart of our journey. We've got to deal with that. If we're going to be serious followers of Jesus, if you're here and you're wanting to be someone serious to follow Jesus, that's a question we're constantly having to deal with. Am I asking God to fit with me? Or am I fitting with Him? One of the reasons Jesus is successful is because He doesn't do His own thing. He makes a decision not to do His own thing, but to do the thing of the Father. Are you with me? So alignment with the Father, or to the Father, is an important idea. Here's a second big idea I want you to see from the passage. He didn't just align to the Father, He agreed with the Father. So if alignment is saying, I'm not going to do my thing, then agreement takes that alignment one step further. Look at verse 19, the second part of it. We looked at the first part in our first point. Jesus said, the Son can do nothing by Himself. And then He goes on to say this: He can do only what He sees the Father doing. Because whatever the Father does, the Son does also. Now look at this, very powerful. Jesus makes a decision not to do what He wants. The Son can do nothing. But then He agrees with the Father. He says, right then, I'm only going to do what I see the Father doing. I'm only going to go where the Father goes. I'm only going to say what the Father tells me to say. Remarkable. In fact, earlier on in chapter 5, Jesus heals a man who's beside a pool, surrounded. The pool is surrounded by dozens and dozens of sick people. And yet Jesus only heals one man. And that can create a bit of a challenge for us. Why didn't Jesus heal everybody by the pool? Now, a difficult idea for us is, could it be that actually it was that man that Jesus heard the Father about? Now, that's a difficult idea for us. Is He saying yes to one and no to another, or yes to a moment and no to a moment? But if you look at the life of Jesus carefully, it's remarkable where He goes, but it's also remarkable where He doesn't go. It's remarkable who He touches, but there's also obvious examples of people that He, for one reason or another, isn't touching. So you get this dynamic with Jesus that He is following the word of the Father. He's made a decision to agree with the Father. If alignment is not doing what I want, then agreement is doing what He wants. And for some of you, literally, agreement could be, without putting pressure on you on a day like Academy, agreement could be signing up for Academy. I mean, quite literally. For me, genuinely, agreement was leaving home and going to Bible college. It was one of the biggest change moments of my life. I loved my home. I loved my family. I loved where I lived. I didn't want to get away from Northern Ireland per se. I loved it there. And yet this is what God wanted me to do. Now, it wouldn't be what he wants everybody to do, but it's what he wanted me to do. And I had to make a decision as a 17-year-old not to do what I wanted because I had a plan, but then to release what I wanted in order to do what he wanted. And it sounds so simple, but it is a dynamic idea at the heart of true kingdom authority and true spiritual authority, and one that we must get to grips with. Our 18-year-old daughter, she's just gone off on a gap year serving in the church. It's a wonderful thing for us, and we're very, very excited for her. But in June, she passed her driving test. And she passed it first time. All three of our children had passed their driving tests first time. So she's the third of our three. So she's under a bit of pressure in the middle of her A-levels and doing a driving test. There we are. And after June, just normality returned to our home. It was absolutely lovely. No stress, no pressure. And she passed her driving test first time. But I remember she had done a few lessons, and then her mum took her out on driving lessons. Now, I never took any of my children out on a driving lesson because I love them. And I didn't want to kill any of them. That was really the bottom line. My dad was like Jesus on earth. My dad was the most amazing man. And the only time I had a genuine knockdown, drag-out fight with my dad was over a driving lesson. And I thought, if I can push my dad to that edge, then my children are not safe with me in the car with them. So my wife's a proper Christian, so she took them out on their driving lesson. But I remember Beth Ann, very confident, classic extrovert, you know, and she's just going for it. After 10 lessons, she knows how to drive. My wife has been driving for 30 years, and she's got her advanced driving test. So she's a pretty good driver, and I'm listening to then a 17-year-old telling my wife she knows how to drive. Sounds a bit crass, doesn't it? And my wife says to my 17-year-old, listen, I know you think you can drive, but if you're going to get into my car and drive, here's the deal. Here's the one condition. You have to do everything I say. And Beth Ann went, but no, there's no buts. No ifs, no ands, no small print, no caveat. There's no get-out clause here. If you're going to get in my car without dual control, and you're going to drive my car, that's the deal. To drive my car, you have to do what I say. Are you with me? And I heard a 17-year-old push back. But I can drive. No, you think you can drive. Are you with me? And it sounded really crass to hear a 17-year-old push back on an experienced driver who's never had an accident and who has an advanced driving test to her name. Imagine what that sounds like to God. When someone like me and you says to the creator of the universe, I know how to drive. That's part of the human problem. It's weird because God created us in his image with that ability, and yet if we take that ability too far, it becomes a disability to us. And we actually look at God and we say, I know how to do this better than you. And actually the Lord is inviting us into his car. He's inviting us into his world. He's inviting us into his purpose. And here's what he's saying to us. Now do it my way. I know how to do this. I know how to run the universe. I was running a universe before you were born. I can cope. I can do it. You've got to trust me that what I tell you to do will work. Are you with me? And actually, at the heart of spiritual authority is the willingness of humans to say, I will do it your way. That's a tough one. That's not easy. That's grown up Christianity. That will push you. And that's something I have to literally attend to every day of my life. I've been a follower of Jesus since I was 8 years old, and I'm now 52. And every day I have to make a decision that I will do what he wants me to do. And many days I do that. And some days I think for a moment or two I can drive better than God. And that's when, generally speaking, things go slightly wrong. Want to encourage you, as Jesus did, not just to align to the Father, not do what he wants, but agree with the Father. And what does that produce? Here's the last thing and we're finished. It produces an authority from the Father. If you want authority from, we have to align to and agree with. Are you with me? Big idea. Here's what Jesus says. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he does. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives life to them, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it. Now, the wee shift there that takes place. Jesus is saying, I do only what the Father does. But here, Jesus is being given permission to do it himself. And in fact, later on, it says that the Father has given the Son permission to give life. That the Father has given the Son authority. A Roman soldier came to Jesus who had a sick servant, and he asked Jesus to heal his servant. And the Roman soldier, who had 88 soldiers under him, said to Jesus, you don't even need to come to my house. You can just speak the word. Why? He says this, because I too am a man under authority. Now note that. He didn't say, I am a man with authority. He said, I'm under authority. The Roman understood, if I'm under, I have. You know, we don't take authority. Authority is given. You have authority because someone has given that to you. Jesus has authority to heal because someone has given him that authority. And the Roman soldier goes on to say this. He says, I tell this one to go and he goes, that one to come and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. Why does the servant do it? Not because of the centurion, but because of what the centurion is under. You with me? And I meet a lot of beautiful Christians who want dynamic spiritual authority in their journey without aligning and agreeing. And if we want to have authority in our journey, we've got to say no to what we want sometimes. Come on. And we've got to say yes to what he wants. And when we say no to what we want and say yes to what he wants, we get authority in that sphere of our lives. When I leave here tonight, I will drive up the A14 back towards the Midlands. And if I'm driving up the A14 and a policeman stands out in the middle of that road and he puts his hand up, everything stops. I mean, he could be, 14 stone in the wet, 5'10" in size, but he stands up there and he puts his hand up, we will stop. Hopefully. We will stop being law-abiding citizens. And actually, I'm not stopping for him. I don't even know who he is. Don't know his name. Don't need to know his name. Don't need to know anything about him. All I need to know is he's wearing a crown. He represents an authority. And therefore, I'm not really stopping for him because I don't know who he is. I'm stopping for the one he's under. Yeah. If that same man 2 weeks later stands on the A14 in his underpants, same person, same man, 5'10", 14 stone in the wet, nobody's going to stop. People are going to swerve around and people are going to call the ambulance. Why? Because he's standing in his own authority. Look, can I say this carefully? The devil's not afraid of you. He's been around a long time. What he's afraid of is the person we are under.